platform solutions, and you can tell this is a technology-driven introduction. He focuses on platform solutions to meet governance, risk, and compliance requirements. Prior to founding Fast Pepper Solutions, he was a compliance officer for a multinational finance company where he leveraged technology solutions to solve compliance and supervision issues. And outside of his business, Fast Pepper, he acts as a non-public arbitrator for, is it FINRA? FINRA, okay. Engaged in the deliberation intra-FINRA member disputes. And also, he's a certified fraud examiner. So one of the reasons I love to make introductions is because I always try to find a fun fact about our speakers. Sometimes they know that I know about them, and sometimes they don't. So I asked my friend James Wu, who helped facilitate Wrally's attendance speaking here today. I said, tell me about this guy, Wrally. I mean, where did he get a name like that? And he said, and here's your fun fact, which I didn't know about, is that you're from Canada.
Yeah.
And apparently you either play hockey or you're a rabid hockey fan. I don't know which.
Well, both actually.
Very good. Well, anyway, welcome and thank you. David Pearson is at the far left, and David has a BS degree from University of Nevada in Reno, and he went to Hastings Law School. He started in insurance defense originally, and then he started his own practice in 1996. I know him through word of mouth because he is very, very active in the Contra Costa County Bar Association. And he is actually on the board of directors for the solo and small firm section, where he's actually been quite active for our association. His current practice focuses on the representation of businesses and their owners in both transactional and litigation areas. He has a heavy emphasis on mergers and acquisitions. I understand you have an office in Fresno and in Walnut Creek?
Kind of, yeah. So I started in Fresno. So
okay, well I saw it on your website. And
mostly I work out of my house.
Okay, great, then that's what we're all going to learn how to do today. But so I asked Teresa Hurley for a fun fact about you, and this is what she told me. She described you as a weekend warrior. Apparently you're one of those guys that likes to run for 12 hours at a time with lots of heavy weights on you? Yeah?
Not much running, but yeah, you're moving with heavy weights.
Very
For a purpose.
Good. Well, welcome. And lastly, my friend and colleague, David Rosenbaum. He's the managing partner at McDowall, Cotter, and I want to thank him for coming from San Mateo County to Contra Costa County for this presentation. I've seen him speak on technology a number of times, and like I said, you're in for a treat. McDowall Cotter, well, let me start with David, is a trial attorney and provides defense litigation in trust and will disputes, personal injury defense, and public entity defense. And then his firm also provides trust and estate planning and post-death administration services as well as entity formation. He's here. They have 6 lawyers in their firm. 3 of them have small children and often work remotely. And so he has a unique experience about how that works within a firm. McDowall Cotter, and I'm sure this is pertinent to your presentation, uses a PC system running Microsoft Server and Microsoft Exchange Server software. Your fun fact was really actually kind of fun and a little bit surreptitious on my part. This is what I know about David. He speaks and cooks Greek, and I understand that you wear a pink tutu at least once a month. And I'm going to let you explain that. Thank you, gentlemen.
And you know what? If you had had this presentation in 2 days, which is the 22nd or 2/2, I would have worn my pink tutu for you. In the spirit of our school, we have tutu day. And so the 22nd, I was asked by the kindergarten teacher long ago if I would be a male that would wear a tutu, and not being shy, I said, of course, because she wanted me to set an example for some of the little boys, and it also ties into the way they teach math. So there you go. You will find me every tutu day that's a school day wearing a pink tutu. So thanks everybody for coming. We've kind of been banging around for the last few weeks how we're going to do this, and we thought that the first thing we want to start off with is where Renee just left off for me, which is kind of what's our platform, what's our hardware, because we're all coming from different perspectives, and each of you is coming from a different perspective. So I'll tell you what my hardware is. I have a PC-based system at the office. Everything at the office is all PC. Okay, I have a Dell PC laptop here. I use an HTC One telephone, which is Google Android operating system. And when I have to go do things mobile and in court, I actually use an iPad. So I cover basically all three systems. And then for my leisure, I use Kindle. And I think it's important, just because our profession is a lot of stress. And if we don't have something to relieve our stress, whatever it may be, it's important. So I think recreation is important, and this is the common tool for me. The nice thing about Kindle is it actually will work on my phone and my Google operating system, and it will also work on my iPad and my Apple system. So, Wrally.
Yeah, well, as Renee mentioned, I work with businesses and government. I'm going to be talking about e-discovery because coming out of the fraud examination area, especially in compliance, a lot of it has migrated into mainstream legal discovery. Number of states, California since 2009 has had a statute on the books which create a framework for which e-discovery is effective. And a lot of the tools that both Davids that are bookending are talking about, how to leverage those and actually make the most use when you actually have to get the information that you need from a respondent. And so I'll be focusing on that, some of the tools, the technology, and then some of the strategies that can be used in e-discovery.
As I said, I'm a true solo. I don't have any employees. No one works for me. I work by myself. And I've been all Mac since I went out on my own, and actually long before that. I got my first Apple computer in '82, I think it was, a long time ago. I use iPhone, iPad, so I'm kind of all Apple.
He's in the ecosystem.
Yep.
So let me get a show of hands. Litigators versus transactional lawyers. Litigators, half. Transactional, the other half. Great, great. One of the reasons I want, or both,
One
right?
of each.
And I can fall into that depending on the day of the week when I'm not wearing a tutu. The reason I want to know that is simply because we have transactional lawyers in our office as well. And so I think, regardless of what type of law you're practicing, the concept of a virtual law office kind of transcends all that we do. The presentation, I'm just going to briefly whip through a slideshow here that I put together back for the Association of Defense Counsel. And what was interesting is I look at this presentation that I put together in December, and David Pearson handed us an outline that he tends to use, and it's amazing how much the topics that we were sharing with each other matched up. And it wasn't just that the topics matched up, but the outline matched up almost kind of topic for topic. It was amazing. So as we go into this, we have to ask ourselves, where do we work? And I look at it and say, okay, some of us work on the beach. Some of us try to work from the ski area. Others actually still work in a law office. Sometimes I have to work directly from the courthouse. My wife is Greek, so I wind up in Santorini occasionally. I go to the local library frequently. Every Tuesday, actually, I drop my son off for an hour, and I go to the library. And that's where I get a lot of work done. And then, obviously, from home, and sometimes underwater. So the idea is that we work from a lot of places, whether it's the coffee shop, home, libraries, you name it. And that's what gets us to be virtual. And I think that's what gets us really to actually have much more fun at what we do, because we can go to different places and work in different environments.
And somewhat that's also a stressor, because our clients know that wherever we go, we might be able to be reached, which can be a downer.
How many of us respond to emails almost immediately when it's received? Yeah. The control factor, huh? Not saying no to the client. So what tools do attorneys use? If you look at the toolbox, the relics used to be the dictaphone. I don't know who's here young enough or old enough to remember those. Remember the old paper diary? And then, of course, going to court, it's the piles and piles of boxes. So now we have a modern toolbox. And the modern toolbox happens to be actually this, my iPad, my computer, and my Kindle. So all of those things that you just saw earlier, I can do each and every one of those things, if you will. The dictation, the volumes of documents, whatever it is, all on one or each of these devices. And that makes it really handy to be able to be mobile. You want to share, because you were talking earlier about document discovery and so on, but yet you work out of your house.
Yeah, I mean, it's the same thing. You're going to use the same tools. I mean, I use, and I've demoed these before, this is a little portable scanner. It's by Fujitsu. This is actually a couple generations old now. I think they have a slightly smaller one. You can take it anywhere. Technically, you can operate it off a battery or off your laptop. Generally, you're going to want to plug it in so it doesn't eat your battery. And then a slightly bigger one that works just fine on your desktop. Hit a button, scans right into Acrobat. It allows you to be a paperless, not paper-free, but paperless office, which I've been almost since I opened my office in '96.
Anybody here run a paperless office? I get half a hand, and I see a half a hand there. What's your kind of concept of paperless?
Well, it's hard to be paperless because it's just so paper-driven, the occupation, you know, and you accumulate paper somewhere, you know, it's hard to just rip something up or shred it, you know, but I try to scan everything through.
Good.
When I get it, I try to scan it through and have it there.
So,
And that's what I do. With paper comes into the office, it's scanned in. I mean, recently in the last few years, I've tried to reach agreements in my litigation cases with other attorneys to exchange documents electronically. I've only been successful a few times. Most attorneys are still resistant to doing that. I don't know if you found any attorneys willing to do a case all electronically, but it's slowly creeping up, the number of attorneys who are willing to do it. And it saves time, it saves your client money. You don't have to go to the post office and send a big stack of paper to the opposing counsel.
so
Just real quick, are you
Yeah.
going to talk about encryption at all? Thank you.
And I'll be talking a little bit about it too.
And what about document management? Like, how do you manage it? It may be beyond the
No,
scope,
I mean,
but
I'm going to
that's,
touch on a little
Okay.
bit about file systems and how you manage it. And
I'll be talking about
for
like,
those who use this system,
So Bill, this is great. I'll give you kind of a couple of backgrounds, and we're going to flow in and out. And this is awesome to have questions.
Yep.
First thing is David Pearson came in and he says, I hate having overhead. And I run a law office where half of the work we do is probably some of the lowest rate work that you can imagine doing. And so I can't afford to have a lot of overhead, especially in the form of human beings. So we look in our office for every opportunity to automate and to minimize the need for humans. And one of the things we started doing a year ago, he's been doing it for over a decade. One of the things we started doing a year ago is everything from litigation, every piece of mail that comes in gets scanned. And what that allows me to do simply is to put it in the to be filed and basically ignore it from there, and it goes to paper. From the remote standpoint, and I'll show you some software that we use in a minute, from the remote standpoint, what it allows me or anybody in my office to do is to access whatever document they need anywhere in the world, because it's all on our server.
and if you're not a big enough office to have a server, there are, I mean, the cloud, such as it is, there are services, and I'm going to talk about one of them, but you have to be somewhat leery about those, especially given your ethical duties to confidentiality.
Now, from document management standpoint, and we can get more into it, but from a document management standpoint, our office uses what a case management software that's called Time Matters. It's basically owned by Lexus at this point. The competing case management software is called Abacus. And through that software, what we are able to do is name the case, Smith versus Jones, the Rosenbaum family estate plan, whatever it is, and we use that as what I call our control tower. And so every time you want to enter into a case from the computer, you go into Time Matters, you go into your Abacus, and you click on that file name, and it opens up its own screen, graphic user interface screen. And through that screen, I've got basically all the information I need. It's got all the contacts that are associated with it. It's all my opposing counsel. It's got a component where we have all of our documents. So this gets to the document storage component of it. Every document that is scanned as a PDF and saved can be automatically saved by this little button we push called Time Matters Save, TM Save. And it's an add-on. It basically saves it in the subdirectory where it's supposed to be saved. But in terms of Time Matters, the document is right there on the screen. Okay? And the way I look at it is this. Human beings do not remember things that are in S/law files/ ABCD company /12345 file /correspondent I can't remember that. I got way too many files. But I can remember I need to go to Smith versus Jones and open up the document that has a good descriptor on it. Time Matters and Abacus also allow you to do something called merging documents, which means generating a document in Word or WordPerfect from the system, and it automatically saves it. So what we've done with Time Matters is we have about 150 different templates, everything from a blank letter that puts in just the address, Dear Mrs. Smith, : and then the very truly yours, and it's blank. Okay, all the way to a motion for summary judgment, points and authorities, where we have our standard language with the code of civil procedure, the standard language for interpreting a summary judgment, and the burdens of proof, so that that kind of gut template data is already there. So the only thing I need to do is I need to put in the substance. Now I do a lot of work for public entities. Dangerous condition is a very classic area of law, and we have various immunities. So I actually have a whole summary judgment motion on sidewalks that I can just merge. And the reason I merge it is because it takes all that case-specific data, like the caption of the case, and puts it in. So what we're not doing, and one of the rules we have for our document management, is you are never allowed to go back to an old document and copy and paste it in. If we have a system that's going to change, we'll go change the template. But what we don't want to do is go back and borrow the old language that may not be relevant, that may have changed. In my law, the Code of Discovery, Civil Code of Procedure, changed its entire numbering system about 4 years ago. And so instead of having a code number in open paren D, it's code number .020 and its subparts. So this is just a way that we manage our documents going through. And again, as I've said, we're actually going to start probably July 1st scanning every other piece of mail that comes in, so that we are no longer going to have paper floating around the office, right? It will come in to me and it will go out. We do still send mail out, although I encourage my lawyers to send things by email and decide for yourself whether it needs to be something of formal nature that's going to wind up maybe in front of a judge, something that is going to wind up in front of a client that needs to look good, and something that needs to be reflective, because I think we have a tendency to type emails real quick and then hit the send button without thinking, whereas if you really want to think through it, we do it on letterhead and we send it as a PDF. But we're not sending it by mail as much as we used to. Our postage rates are going down, our copy rates are going down, and we're not spending a lot of time chasing where is that document, right? Because it's all in the system.
Does anybody here send an email letter and then also put it in the postal service and or the fax?
I still do it. I'm still guilty.
I hate when that happens. Like, why do I need multiple copies? Just send me the email. I'm all good. I don't have to throw your letter away then. Because that's what I'm going to do. I've already got it electronically.
Any questions at that point?
I have a question on what do you do with all the emails that you send? So, in
I
terms of where in the system that you're talking about,
Yeah.
how does it
So
them and save them?
it depends. So Time Matters will allow you to do Time Matters, and I'm sure Abacus does as well, though I haven't looked at it. Time Matters will allow you to do one of two things. You can generate the email and send it straight out of Time Matters. It's a very clunky user interface, and I hate it, so I don't do it. I still use Outlook. But what you can do with Outlook is you can go and you can, what they call, connect that email to that document. We're still not very good at all of that, and given the volume of emails that we're getting, you really need to choose. But if it's something like I'm reporting to a client, where I know that somebody else in my office may need to see it at some point in time, those are the ones that I connect. A settlement demand comes in from opposing counsel, that's when I'm going to save as or connect to Time Matters, so that whoever needs to see it can see it. But if it's some of that dribble-drabble about, well, should we do mediation, maybe, maybe not, those, you really got to make a decision. And it's hard, Renee, because you want to develop policies in your office, and you're going to talk about processes, right? I mean, when you're doing something, you want a process or a policy in the office that's going to be followed. In my view, I call it the 80-20 rule. You want something that people are going to follow at least 80% of the time. And you want it that way so that you have some responsibility and you can go back and say, where is this thing? You want it so that if someone new comes to your office, it's real easy to jump on board. It's a variety of reasons. So you still have to you're going to have to figure these things out as you go along.
Do we have any Mac users here? Other than myself. So I use a program called Daylight, and Market Circle, who's the manufacturer of the program, has a link that goes to Apple's Mail. And every email that comes in, you can tag it to a file. I use Daylight as my central case management system. I've actually seen Time Matter since it began,
Yeah.
way back when.
Yeah, we've had it since 2.0, so it's now
Yeah.
12.
So, I mean, that's been an excellent program, and I've kind of seen it develop over the years. I'm not sure that for a solo firm, I don't know what the pricing runs now, but it may be cost prohibitive.
It's about $1,200 for the software itself, and then you're going to spend for it. Now they do annual maintenance programs.
Always.
Always.
Yeah.
You know what? I'll tell you, they do.
You don't
but
own it anymore, you're now renting it.
No, I got it, but you're renting that version of it, but you get free upgrades as long as you pay the annual
Yeah.
maintenance. The one thing about Time Matters that I will say is great is their support system is phenomenal. I mean, we're on that. We can call support. We call support probably once or twice a month for some little issue that may happen or something we're not quite sure. You're rarely on a hold. Their level 1 support can answer 90% of the questions. So, I'm getting my value for the money we're spending. And again, you're right. I've got 12 people operating the system. This is the spine of our system. In fact, when we were just adopting it, people hated it, and now 10 years later, if Time Matters goes down, everybody wants to go take a holiday because they're like, we can't get our work done. So.
Now it's got time and billing. Is that part of this also?
It's built into your program.
So Time Matters has billing in it?
So Time Matters does have a billing software in it. I don't use it. We use time slips. We've used time slips forever and a day. In my view, it is a more robust system for the data information that you want to track. I mean, we track a lot of data through that system. It's easier to set up things. The add-on, the time and billing software kind of addition to Time Matters was an afterthought, and Time Matters actually will sync to time slips. So when we open a file in Time Matters, once it's saved originally, the key data like the address data, the name of the file, all of that goes right over to time slips. So it's not seamless, but what we've done is try to get the best of both worlds.
So David, what do you do for Apple?
Market Circle makes a program called Billings. I use their program, and I track my accounting in QuickBooks.
We use QuickBooks.
QuickBooks can do billing. It's gotten better over the years. It's still a little on the kludgy side, but a lot of firms are starting to switch to QuickBooks. I don't have to. A lot of times in the past, time slips sending data to QuickBooks didn't work very well, and you never knew what you were going to get. So they had to type it once into time slips, and you type it a second time into QuickBooks to make sure you have accuracy. So, a lot of folks have started looking at just using QuickBooks to do the entire accounting side of their practice. And if you're going to do that, I would hire a QuickBooks consultant to come in and make sure everything gets set up and trains you on how to do that for your particular practice.
We use QuickBooks as our for receiving our invoices and basically for our accounting and profit and loss statements and information to the accountant. So, the way it works is you open up Time Matters, you do whatever work you're going to do on the file, you record it in time slips. Our bookkeeper then, when it's the end of the month or whatever, will generate her invoices for us. Some of those invoices go by mail, depending on the client. Some of those invoices go by email. In fact, I'd say about 80% of my invoices now go by email. They're still PDFs. It's still the 8, 10, 12-page invoice. And then I have one client that has an auditing company that does bill auditing for us. That is a PDF that we upload to the to legal bill servers, and then they do all their scrutiny and knock down my .1s and .3s here and there.
And I do all my billing electronically through PDFs. I have it in my fee agreement that I'm going to send it to you via email unless you tell me otherwise. And I haven't had anybody tell me otherwise in a long time.
Even with my business, I do all my billing electronically. I can't remember the last time I actually received a physical check. I almost don't know what to do with one now. So.
Well, I still get checks. I just
We
send
get
the bills out
checks.
electronically. But you can also use your iPhone and take a picture and deposit it.
That's right. That's true. Yeah.
So I just wanted to touch on a couple of apps that are kind of that work for me when I'm working. First of all, this is an actual picture of my telephone here. This is Outlook on my phone. We have purchased we actually just added on to our existing Time Matters. So we use Outlook, and we use Outlook Exchange Server as our overall email system, contacts system. Time Matters has something called Exchange Server in it, and it's a link that will allow your Time Matters to sync with Outlook. it allows Outlook to sync with Time Matters. Now what we've done is we've set up only a one-way sync. Time Matters is our master system, and we don't want to upset the apple cart, but what Time Matters does, so Time Matters will sync everything to each attorney's Outlook. So I get up to date, if for instance, someone at my office was changing something I have to do tomorrow, it will sync, we have it set to sync every 15 minutes, so within 15 minutes I will see whatever it is on my smartphone. Not only on my smartphone, but I have also on my iPad my Outlook, okay? And as far as I'm concerned, now we're getting into the guts of virtual office. Because what I have with me now is I go everywhere with my iPad, and in fact we stopped printing our calendars. We have a calendaring meeting every Monday. We stopped printing calendars for all the attorneys. We all show up with our iPads and we follow with our iPads on it. So this is my thing that I can walk around to court with. I take to every meeting I have, and if there needs to be some further scheduling, I can clear it here. Okay? Time Matters Outlook, I can click a connect button to connect whatever I might put in my Outlook. Like today I was at the doctor's office. I got my appointment for 6 months from now. It's on my system here. As soon as I got back to the office, I pushed the TM Connect, and it now synced that back to Time Matters. But we have a master one-way flow because we want our office to control what's going on. I'm seeing a lot of kind of scrunched eyes, which means people tend to be confused. Am I making sense yet? Not at all.
I'm interested in the one-way versus two-way
Yeah.
sync.
Okay.
What does that mean?
Okay, so one-way sync is it goes from Time Matters to Outlook only.
It's a push one way only.
And if I were to go into Outlook on my computer and type in I get off the phone and type in a new appointment, it will not go to Time Matters. So that's one way. Okay. We could set up a two-way, which meant if I added it to Outlook, then it would go to Time Matters. The problem with that is that not everybody, especially attorneys, are good at tracking their appointments and so on. And so we have set up for our attorneys, frankly, is if you're going to have some appointment scheduled, give it to the paralegal or give it to our front office person who is very good at that. That's their sole thing. My older partner, Bob Bell, who I've known for 22 years since I started practicing, was just the most incredible beast at setting appointments that no one knew about and not paying attention to the calendar and everything. So finally I trained him, just pass it to Sylvia. So what we want is we want a control mechanism. And I think that's kind of one of the key things for processes, right, is you've got to have a control mechanism. And our control mechanism is one way only.
Yeah, whenever you're syncing to something back to a critical system like a time management, billing, or document solution, you want to make sure that your mobile device doesn't have any ability for someone to exploit it, to get back into something that might be more sensitive. Anytime you have like an incoming traffic to your office or your server, what's going to happen is somebody out there is going to figure out a way that they can exploit it. And we hear about that all the time, like in, sitting in a coffee shop and getting on Wi-Fi and so forth. And some of the exploits with that have occurred with droids now. And believe it or not, even iPhones. I'm finally an iPhone convert, but even with iPhones, to be able to exploit some of the two-way traffic.
And I use Market Circle on the Mac Daylight, and they actually have an app that you put it on your phone. It comes for free when you buy the program. Put it on your iPad, your iPhone, and it syncs back and forth. So I have my calendar, everything goes back and forth. All of my client data is right in the app.
So I have this Google device, and why did I buy it? Actually, I did a lot of research. It was in the heyday of the Galaxy S5 and the iPhone i5, whatever goings on. So I started doing a little research, and each one of the people that I researched, CNET, you name it, all said they're both great phones, and you might want this and you might want that. But if you want a phone that's got a little bit better battery power, that's got a real nice HD screen on it, it's a little bit bigger, easier to hold. I mean, we can compare them, that kind of stuff. Go with the HTC One, right?
Or you can get the one that's almost the size of the iPad Mini. I mean, it's a huge.
Yes, right.
For old people who can't see anyone.
So then you go here. Now, there are some things that I love this phone. I wouldn't trade it in for anything. But for instance, I can only sync one calendar to this version of it. Whereas with my iPad, not only can I sync my office calendar to it, but since I have 2 boys that are playing baseball and soccer at the same time of the year, I got to know where I need to be every evening from 4 to 6, and usually it's in 2 places that are neither at the same park. I can have both of those calendars on here. So actually, when I'm at home, or when I'm at the office, but when I'm at home and my wife and I are trying to figure out what are we going to do, I get to see my entire schedule on this. I cannot see my entire schedule on that. This only has my office schedule. Okay. So just kind of one of those quirky things about a Droid-based system versus the Apple system, the iOS. So here are some of the smartphone apps that I like. There, the Outlook, Google Maps. So how did I get here today? Google Maps on here. Here's a classic use and virtual again. What did I do? Our time matters. We put in the address of where I need to be. That address, because it's in my event for the day, synced to my Outlook. I opened up that Outlook here and I simply touched the address, and by touching the address, my Google Maps came up.
For a little while longer till Apple finishes their lawsuit.
Yeah.
It's part of the litigation right now.
And from that, I called it up, then I ran and it runs the navigation. So I'm able to, from the office, be able to go wherever I want to go simply with this, which to me is, it's a great app. The other app that I like the most on my phone is something called TuneIn Radio, and it just allows me, when I'm driving over the hills into Modesto and I lose my KQED, I can actually listen to KQED on TuneIn Radio here, and my newest favorite one is MLB Radio, because then I can listen to Giants wherever I go as well. But, so those are the apps. I'm not going to talk about Acrobat. I think you might chat about Acrobat a little bit, but it's an app that I have here and also on my iPad.
Yeah, just briefly, there shouldn't be an attorney practicing today who doesn't have Acrobat. If you're in federal court, you're going to be filing electronically. You're generally going to do PDFs. Most people are going to scan documents in. You're going to scan to PDF. It's a common exchange format nowadays. So there's no reason you shouldn't have it and know how to use it. There is specific tools built in for lawyers. You can bait stamp all of your documents in Acrobat. You can customize your bait stamps any which way you want. I just sent out 3,000 documents the other day on a CD. The client sent them to me in small scanned batches. You can put all the batches in at once, hit one button, and it'll consecutively number everyone with your bait stamp numbering system that you want to apply. So, Acrobat's a great program. It's been around forever. When it first came out, there were about 10 different competitors, and Acrobat's the last one standing.
There's a lot of other programs out there that you're going to be encountering. In real estate transactions, you have DocuSign. There's a new startup that, it's not so new anymore, but LPMS, which is automating the whole back office for real estate transactions in the mortgage business. It's not to be confused with with Fannie and Freddie Mac, but they borrowed the name, LPMS. So their business is to actually automate all the paperwork that if you're involved in litigation and anything to do with a real estate transaction, eventually you're going to start seeing and encountering that. And we'll talk about that a little bit with e-discovery. How do you go about actually navigating all the different systems and things that your respondent might be using to get what you need?
You should also learn how to use Acrobat to do redaction. It actually works very well. You can redact your documents before you produce them right within Acrobat, and that works very well.
So, and I think, what we're talking about is Acrobat Professional, right?
Yep.
You can't
You
do
don't
it
want
in
the free
standard.
version or the version that comes with the scanners. The low-end version doesn't do a lot of that. You want the professional, which is only like $200, I think, $250. And some of the scanners you buy will actually come with professional. And you can do redaction, you can create forms, you can do the Bates numbering. There's tons of uses for it if you actually explore the program. Yes?
Does it let you do fillable forms?
Yes, you make your own fillable forms.
So,
The bars actually used it for that in the past.
So full disclosure, my sister started at Adobe 20 years ago and actually was a preeminent star with getting Acrobat. So I've been familiar with this for a long time. Acrobat comes in essentially 3 flavors. Acrobat Reader, which is the kind that allows you to look at any document you want and not do anything with it.
You can fill in forms with it.
Some form. Acrobat Standard, which is what's sold with your PCs and any other kind of add-on software that comes with your hardware. And then there's the great version, the professional version. And what you have just talked about, David, is what we've been doing more and more and more in our office, which is bait stamping and redactions. I've got quite a few high-profile files where there's a lot of private information, or flip side, there are documents where there are factual representations in them, but within it, in the body, there are also legal opinions. And so you can go in and use this redaction tool and label the redaction attorney-client privilege. And if you imagine you can do that and have a bait stamp, you can identify to somebody that B00135 has an attorney-client privilege in the middle, and you can identify then the to whoms, for whoms, all that information in case it's tested. It is super powerful. From the litigation standpoint, I will tell you that over the last 3 years, I have seen a great convergence from the pile of documents that are coming to me to simply, here's a CD and it's all bait stamped. And I do have a couple of major litigation matters where it's a real estate disclosure case. We kind of got a lot of construction stuff in it, and actually my client showed up at deposition 2 weeks ago with this much paperwork. And we produced all of it, and I will drop the word Dropbox, and I'm going to wait. We're going to get there. But ultimately what I did was I put it on Dropbox so that the attorneys at the deposition could get it over the next couple of days, because it was so huge, and I only showed up with, there's 12 attorneys, and I only showed up with a CD for the plaintiff's attorney, so it just made it easier to share. But at any rate, that stuff, Acrobat is something huge. It's worth the investment in the professional version.
If you're interested in Acrobat, talk to Teresa afterwards and let her know. In the solo section in the past, we've actually done a 1-hour seminar for MCLE credit on Acrobat that I've taught. It's been a few years, but we've done it before.
We have a client who's objected to us sending information over the internet that has HIPAA information now. And large companies are saying, we love it, you send us all these documents, but we do not want that information. So I can see where that Acrobat, you could go in and maybe take some of that information out.
You can redact in Acrobat to take the critical, like social security numbers. And there's
Right.
actually a code section in the
Yes.
code where
Yeah.
you're not allowed to file a document with a social security number with the court. You're supposed to redact that, and you can do that within Acrobat. But they probably want everything either fully redacted or they want it fully encrypted. So you'd have to get encryption software that you have and that the recipient has and exchange the password so that they can do an encryption key so it can't be decrypted even after you've done redaction.
So here's some of the software that I've been using on my iPad. Obviously Acrobat. Over there you see PDF. That's something called, it's another company that allows you to read your PDFs real nicely on the screen, flip through them. If I'm at a deposition, I'll actually, and I have all the documents that are on my iPad. And think about this. I mean, I had a settlement conference in Sacramento a few months ago, and the plaintiff had 4,000 pages of medical records. And I knew we were going to be talking about her medical history at the settlement conference. I was able to put all 4,000 pages on this with like nothing. And then I can read them through the PDF viewer.
You can actually use iBooks. iBooks is nothing but a PDF reader. You can use it to bookmark PDFs and read them.
There you go. So there's apps. There are multiple apps for everything.
There's 100 apps out there on both Android and Mac for reading PDFs.
What else? So some of the other things that I'm using just from the trial standpoint is iJuror. I'm not going to bother you with that, but it's a nice little app on where I can track all my juror stuff. Trial Director and Trial Pad are really big, and I'm going to show you in a minute what Trial Director looks like. And then this is Lexus Nexus. This is TextMap, and what this allows us to do is it allows us to take ASCII text of all depositions, search them on our software, and also I can save that and export it to my iPad, and I can export it with the exhibit. So I can export an annotated deposition transcript to my iPad, and literally I've used this thing to cross-examine witnesses on the stand because I've got their deposition here. So again, no longer am I carrying that big box of depositions and binders and stuff, although I must say something. If you've got a really, really good cross-examination you're about to pull off and you're going to impeach the junk out of this witness, it is so great to walk around with that book. And just, I mean, the art of being a trial attorney and that show and that drama and so on, it really doesn't deal with this. So anyway, those are some of the softwares that I'm using there. And we're gonna. Oh, I just wanted to talk. I'm going to save this Dropbox thing for the last because I know we're all itching to hear about Dropbox and how good or bad it might be. So as I always say, I save the best for the last, and that makes sure you stick around. Synchronization. So here's virtual law office in action, right? You got your iPad. You got your box at the office with 2, 18, 15 screens. I don't know how many. You got your telephone. And you got your PC, okay? And all of these can be tied in by a variety of different systems. One of them, probably the most popular known right now, is Dropbox for dragging and dropping documents. I use it frequently. Log Me In, I'm going to show you Log Me In, which is a remote access to your computer desktop. And then Google Drive, which is Google's attempt at always to try to get in, but just never seems to quite get there. I mean, everybody knows about Dropbox and kind of we know what Google Drive is, but it just doesn't have the panache to be used. So,
Are any of you using any Google apps or Gmail for your law office? If you're using Gmail, stop. Google tells you they read your emails. They scan it and they send you ads based on your emails. If you're using Gmail for client contacts in your law office, drop it immediately and switch to something else that doesn't read your emails.
so let's see here.
David?
Yes.
Sorry.
Marlene's freaking out now.
David knew. Okay, I don't use Gmail.
Okay.
But there's a lot of people out there.
A lot of clients do.
A lot of clients
Yeah.
do. A lot of other attorneys do. I mean, I've just noticed, So, okay, so I don't send out my stuff with Gmail. But I get stuff from Gmail and I respond to it. So, same issue?
Not necessarily there because it's that attorney's problem that they are releasing.
But if it's my
customer-
client.
If you're sending it to them that way and it's confidential information that you wouldn't want to get out, there is that risk, and you should tell the other attorney or figure out another way to
What if
get
your
it to
client
them.
emails you from their Gmail account?
Right, that's what I'm talking about.
Again, you need to talk to your client and put it in your fee agreement if necessary that if you're using Gmail, you are knowingly waiving the attorney-client privilege with me, and I strongly recommend you not to.
What about Yahoo Mail? What about the MSN mails? All these other.
I don't know that the
you
other ones do. Google
Right.
tells you right. I think they were the first to do it. I don't think anybody else has copied them yet, but I would be willing to bet some of them aren't far behind. And what Gmail does is they will actually scan all the emails for keywords to try and come up with advertising that they can push to you based on what you're sending through their system. So
Yeah, Yahoo's not that far behind, and Yahoo has all sorts of other security issues, that we've heard about. I don't know how many people have a Yahoo account and they have to actually change their password, 2 months ago? So they have different security issues than Google. Google, because there's so many different things that are integrated with YouTube now, video, Google Drive, Google Library, Google Docs. There's a lot of different entry points by which malware, really annoying things can actually get onto your own system. But from a security standpoint, it can open up the door where you can release information unintentionally, or someone can gain access to that if they really wanted to try and do that.
So you're suggesting that you have to use like an exchange? I mean,
well, no. I mean, you just have to be careful and be aware of the issues. And I mean, Google is the most prone at this point to having issues, and they tell you up front, we're going to read your emails. Not an individual sitting there, but they have a computer program that scans them and looks for words so they can market to you.
Yeah, if you're using, if you pass everything through Outlook, Outlook does have a feature that you can purchase with one of the, not the base version, but you can actually get an encryption, a simple encryption key for it. It can either be physical, where it does it automatically, so all your communications are encrypted. You can do end-to-end point, which you pass a key to your client so they can read it. And sometimes it's very simple. You can even, if they don't have the capability, or if your client is very low tech and they're reading the email through a Gmail or Yahoo account, it's as simple. They actually give you characters that you put in the subject line that actually passes through the Microsoft server, encrypts it. When they go and open it again, they get a prompt. They're given a key. You can open it again. So there's things that you can do. I know other law firms and other companies, with a vendor, you open up your own account through your own website or your own portal. So all the communication you know is secure because it's originating from you to your client. They can only interact it with online by logging into your portal. So that's another way, another solution that has been very successful.
Questions?
It's a scary world out there. And you would be surprised, we're going to talk about it later, you'd be surprised what you can get at when you Google stuff.
So briefly, just because this has become one of my favorite softwares right now, this is called Trial Director, and this is an exhibit that I used at trial. So what I wanted to get across to you really is that in my last trial I had roughly 52 different exhibits that I was going to use, some of them single page, some of them multiple page exhibits. And the way I was able to run my law office, considering that I'm in San Mateo and my last trial was in Modesto, I was able to have all of these things dropped. I created my PDF folder of exhibits, I dropped it to Dropbox, and I reopened it here onto my iPad. We did have binders that I produced to opposing counsel, to the judge, and I had one on the witness stand. This is for show to the jury. And it allowed me to not only show it, but there's some pretty fun tools. For instance, there's a call out button, so I can make things bigger on the screen if I want. There's highlighting tools. You can see how that highlights, and if I want to grow that up. So basically, this is my show and tell. But what I was able to do then is I wasn't fumbling around with an overhead projector anymore. I had all of my exhibits here, and if I needed to, I can email it to somebody. I can print it. I can do a lot of work with it, and I can show it off. So no longer am I scrambling to have. I remember in the old days we used to actually have a folder for each exhibit, and you'd go to the folder one and you pass these around and everything. So this is a new tool, and by the way, I'm running this thing without a wire. So I can do this with Apple TV, my Apple TV and my Apple Airport, and this is what I do in trial, so I can walk around the courtroom with it. And the jurors were impressed. That was really nice. They were like, how did you do that? It looked great, nice big screen, everything easy to show. So just kind of another nice tool that you can do and be able to be out of the office and get the work done. There's also, I had one other app here that I was going to show you, but I'm not going to worry about it. It's called Lexus Advance. It's a Lexus search tool. It's not nearly as high quality as what you get online for your LexisNexis searching.
What time are we supposed to end? 6?
Is that trial pad you were talking about?
Trial Director or Trial Pad. I prefer Trial Director over Trial Pad. It just had a little more, there were just a little more tools to use. I think one of them costs you about $40 and the other one's free. So what I did was I downloaded both of them, and I've tried both of them at trial to see how it works. I've tried them outside of trial, tried them at trial to see what works. So I want to just flip over here a little bit and show you.
So we probably need to switch over to about a half hour left.
Okay, just let me give you a quick one. A quick onesie. I have two things I want to show you then. First of all is log me in. How many people here remote in? Okay, we use log me in. We just bought. Oh, great. Didn't you know it? Well, best laid plans. Okay, so log me in is a tool that you can use to get onto your computer at the office. Oftentimes what I will do is if I need something to work on at home, we used to use VPN system. Our VPN, which is called Virtual Private Network. It's basically a tunnel into your server that is supposed to be secure, but our IT guys saw some activity on it that got him a little suspicious. And so instead of using the VPN system now, what we do is we remote in. All of my attorneys have have logged me in. We pay for it. It's, get it, because as Renee was saying earlier, I have 3 lawyers in the office, actually 3 other lawyers who are mothers, and then you got me, who is very much a dad involved and out and doing things. So we need to have and be able to work from wherever we are. I may go skiing at Lake Tahoe for a week. Doesn't mean I have to stop working. I can remote in, I can go straight to my Time Matters that I was talking about. I can create my documents off Time Matters. If I want to really work on the document, I save it into the Dropbox and then I open it on my laptop and I work from there. Okay.
Why did you choose that instead of TeamView?
You know, I don't know. Somehow or other we got it to log me in and
Personal preference.
it worked great, and so I never tried anything else out. And my IT guy said, if you like it, it's fine. It's not there's nothing corruptive about it. It's fairly secure. Live long and be healthy type of attitude on it. So that's what we have. What do you have any comments about?
Well, I think the depending on the network that you're using or the portal that you're using, before you actually decide on one or settle on one, you want to make sure, like, what are you going to be using it for? If it's going to be just for simple access to basic files, to pass simple documents, time management, software, that sort of thing, you may not have to worry so much about the security. But if you're actually using it for work, okay, for casework, you want to really make sure you do your due diligence in advance and know where the line is, who owns the information, who owns the security, who's responsible for it when it's in transit, who's responsible for it, when it is at one point, your point or the other, when it passes through their server. What's their remedy should there be a data breach? That's the big thing. What's your exposure? What protections are in place? So if you're using it for a lot of heavy lifting, if a lot of the practice work that you're doing and you're relying on it to pass large documents, and especially if there is information that's confidential in it, in an insurance case or HIPAA concerns are involved, you want to make sure you know where those lines are. I'm familiar with this product, and for most small practices and businesses, it's going to be fine. But if you're involved in a large insurance or a HIPAA case, you want to know where that line is. If the information is released, whose responsibility is it, and who's actually going to own it, and what remedy is available.
And that's one of the things with a lot of the consumer level versions of programs. The company that you're buying the service from, they control the encryption. So if they go out of business, as happened in the late 90s, and their servers are sold by the bankruptcy court, I'm the buyer, I have access to all your data because I hold the encryption key. So things like SugarSync, the encryption key is held by SugarSync, not by you. I use CrashPlan, and that program encrypts it on my end. The company CrashPlan has no access to my data. If something goes wrong, they can't help me. If I forget my encryption key, that password that I've used, tough luck, you're out of luck. They have no access whatsoever other than to an encrypted file. So everything's controlled on my end, not their end.
So for me, one last software that makes it work remotely is called Dragon Naturally Speaking. It's a dictation software. I've been using it for 10 or 11 years. It was our way actually of getting rid of legal secretaries, and I'll be candid about that. We dropped a great expense, and we replaced the secretaries with paralegals, which became billing entities in our office. So I'd like to do a demonstration of Dragon Naturally Speaking, period. It's an incredible software that I use when I'm not in the office, period. New paragraph. Sometimes I have to do a letter, comma, or a points and authorities, comma, and this is what it looks like, period.
I take it you're not a very good typist?
Typically, I can dictate a lot faster than I can type, period. Usually, comma, I can dictate 4 single-page letters in an hour, period. So there's just an example of, so 4 came out wrong, okay? How many times, if I, in which you ask yourself, if I'm typing this, how many times am I going, oh, back, because my fingers just missed it? It's not foolproof, but it comes out of the box at about 92 to 98% accuracy. There are tools to build your vocabulary and create things like, see, points and authorities is capitalized there. Well, but normally it wouldn't, when you dictate it wouldn't be. So you can build your vocabulary. If you go on the Dragon Naturally Speaking website, they actually have a user manual and a hint guide that's 100 pages long. I mean, the resources are out there Dragon has always been kind of a lost soul in terms of its software. When it first came out, the company that owned it didn't really know how to market it.
Right.
Certainly didn't provide a lot of support for it. It was kind of buy it off the shelf, put it on and see if it works, and there were a lot of, the adoption was not very strong. More recently, Dragon has been owned by a company called Nuance. Nuance is a conglomerate that owns everything from optical character reading software to Dragon. They don't know what to do with it. The reality, though, in my view, is it's a phenomenally strong piece of software that allows me not to need a secretary, not to need a paralegal, so that when I'm at Lake Tahoe and I get that email that opposing counsel is, jumping on me, and so from 4 o'clock till 8 o'clock at night, here's what I do. I go onto my log me in, I merge the base format of my letter, I drop it to Dropbox, and I open it here, and I begin my dictation. I have on my software, I also use, we have all of our legal research tools are now available online, so we use predominantly LexisNexis for legal research. I use CEB for all of our trust and wills and trust litigation stuff. And then I use CEB also for my government tort liability. And then lastly, I use Westlaw because they have the Rudder Group civil procedure before trial and all of those key procedural stuff. So I think one thing you'll walk away out of here knowing is that there's no one thing that fits your box. And you're going to have to spend you're going to have to do a variety of things and spend money on a variety of things to make it work. But then you can polish it all such that I can literally take this anywhere in the world.
Is your laptop encrypted?
No, it's got a password to get into it, but encrypted, nothing more. I don't have any of the finger scans or anything like that. So, the answer is if someone got a hold of it, wanted to pry into it, they could absolutely do it. I try to make it a habit, and this will be a nice lead into you and the Dropbox. What I try to do is whenever I've done something on my computer, particularly professionally related that I don't need anymore, I try to delete it off my laptop. If I know it's saved back at the office, I delete it. Likewise, when I'm doing Dropbox, because of some of the issues of security, I usually will tell the opposing side, or whoever it is, I'll leave this up here for a day, or it's up there for a day, and email me as soon as you're done downloading it, and I'm going to delete it. And I can't avoid the whole issue of security, but what I can do is try to minimize the time, and minimize the availability to those who might want to steal it.
Frankly, if the software costs less than an hour or two of your billing time,
Yes.
it's probably worth it to try out, and if it saves you a couple hours of billing time, you've paid for it, and going into the future, it'll pay money back to you. So,
There's another dictation program that it's called Copy Talk. You actually you can do it right off of your phone.
Can you say it again?
Copy Talk is one. You can actually just dictate through your phone. Copy Talk.
COF.
No, copy.
Oh, copy.
COPY. Copy Talk. So you're actually able to just dictate right into the phone. You get an email, PDF, or a number of different formats that you can choose from, and you can at least do a rough end of a document while you're in the car stuck in traffic. So.
And then again, Dragon now has a lot of, you can use it through Olympus dictaphones and other things. I have a colleague that actually does. He's out of Modesto, and so 90% of his time is somewhere on I-5, and he's typically doing it. And he told me, he goes, David, once you introduced me to Dragon, I've never gone back. So he's been really satisfied. And I will tell you one last little anecdote, which is I had to convince the senior partner of my firm long ago to adopt technology. And the reason I did was because I wanted a raise, and he says, I can't give you a raise because I got too many mouths to feed in here. And I said, well, what if I put together a platform? And part of the platform was going to be Dragon Naturally Speaking. He was 75 years old at the time. And you know what? He dictated all hours, every day, on a reel-to-reel tape, and he adopted the software like that, and his secretary was out of a job in about 2 weeks' time. So you can teach an old dog new tricks, or we old dogs can learn new tricks.
Okay, well, since we're talking about electronic files and formats, I thought I'd talk about e-discovery because it's fairly new. A lot of the respondents that you're going to be requesting information from, are going to be doing everything they can to make sure it's going to be a problem for you. And I know that because having worked for an insurance company and a financial services company, whenever we got a request, we actually wanted to make sure that we want to limit your scope. Okay, so I'm the only non-lawyer in the room, so.
You poor fool.
So one of the things that you want to make sure when you're dealing with a respondent, oh, sorry.
I just decided, that's all.
Oh, my thought.
Oh, I see, that's what you want.
Yeah, we're good.
We're good.
Oh, perfect.
Yeah.
That's great. Oh, there we go.
Okay, I see.
Yeah. So what one of the things that you're going to have to understand is, when you're asking for information from a firm, is where is it located? If your insurance company, let's just say it's a life insurance company and or a disability insurance carrier. A lot of the information that might be germane to your case might actually be on a server in Mumbai. Insurance companies, by way of example, have offshored a lot of their underwriting. So the terminology that they use, understanding what the different aspects of what they actually call different elements of their underwriting process are going to be very different. What state and condition is it in? What system are they using? Is it, for instance, are they using SharePoint? Are they using another document management system? How they're indexing it. What do you do to receive it? Like some of the things that we're already talking about, like using some of the features in Adobe. I'll get to that a little bit later. But a lot of the search capability that is available in some of the platforms using products such as IDEA, which in fraud examinations, whenever we actually have to go and look for information that wasn't naturally connected, meaning the indexing or the archiving within a firm, a subject firm or an office, it wasn't really apparent because all the vagaries that you have in different types of indexing and file names, how do you make the connections? How do you find the documents that you're actually looking for? One that I've used quite extensively is called IDEA. I know some practicing lawyers and litigators who started to use this. It's really being prevalent in the fraud examination side because it can handle any type of information platform, whether it's metadata, which is basically just what they call a flat file with a lot of disparate information. You may have seen what an Excel file looks like before it's actually put into Excel. It's like all columns, numbers, and tabs and commas. A lot of time that's the type of information that you might actually have to sift through depending on the type of case that you're dealing with. And then making the relative connections. The thing is, with you have to know the limitations of what some of these platforms are. And making connections, being able to take all these different pieces of information, they might be in an Excel file, an Adobe file, it might be in a comma delimited file, it might be in a Word document, it might just be in an old, what's called a TIFF image file, from 10 or 15 years ago. How do you actually manage all this, put it into one place, and actually make sense of it all? And then, reach your litigation goals. So, a lot of times it's really the small firm against the large firm. Okay, the large firms are counting on you not being able to get the information quickly. So they'll put a lot of resources in it. They might have their information stored across a lot of different platforms, organization silos, across different types of business practice areas. There was a tendency to start consolidating a lot of information into a single point governance, risk, and compliance services. A lot of that has stopped because there was a reliance on concentrating all the information into a single point. Well, with the advent of the cloud, big data, all of these things, it'd be really interesting if what would be revealed if any of the large banks actually allowed all their information to be consolidated into a single point. I'm sure internally it would probably give them stronger management and oversight. From a compliance standpoint, so I'm the one that's always like holding the reins back. Okay, we can, but should we? Was always the argument. But what's the end goal when you have everything in one place? For us and for litigators and from a fraud examination point, that's great because we can actually go and run extensive queries. We can run very eloquent scripts to actually mine for that data. You can find all the documents. You can just ask for everything. And there's no limitation to the scope because if you can find it, well, it's there. That's always been the problem. So when you're looking at it, information is really often fractionated. It's dispersed. They call, like a lot of the lexicon, the words that are used, the terms might be different. It might be partitioned into different types of files, as I mentioned. And it's not in persistent form. It could have been altered over state. If you're dealing with insurance as a good example, a disability case, a person may have taken out a disability policy, 20 years ago. I'd just say, and now there's an issue, and you may be going back, looking at the documentation, premiums, the original underwriting, whatever the case may be. And that information may have been changed several times as the respondent has archived it, re-indexed it, re-imaged it, changed the format. It might now be in some digital form or on a tape on some legacy server. I don't know if anyone, if you remember like an IBM 870 mainframe. I know there's companies that still have them in like a silo in Iowa. So, you really need to make sure that you know what you're dealing with. And this has always been the problem, okay? For efficiency's sake, if you can actually look at it and reach it, you go to the other lawyer's office and you pick up the file, read it, make copies of it, that's the ideal situation. But when you're dealing with a lot of information, especially in civil litigation, you can actually end up asking for information and framing your request, and it's way too narrow. If you ask too much as a small firm, how do you manage it? Okay, and that's always been a problem. Now, a larger firm or a large respondent, a large corporate respondent, can actually derive a benefit from either side. They want to definitely limit you here, right? How many people actually have to deal with that problem where the respondent saying, it's undue hardship, they can't deliver it, it's not going to be germane, or you get too much information. You say, now what do we do with this? So this is where some of the technology that's available can actually help. And the key is actually really knowing what your target is. You want to know what the respondent's information is housed in, what type of format, how it's going to exchange. And you want to make sure that you get the right agreement in advance of what that's going to be. So you have an understanding, do they have it in a number of different formats? Email is a really good one because especially working in the investment advisory and security space, email is like gold, especially in FINRA arbitration cases because the broker dealer, the financial advisor, talks to their clients by email. It is public communication. It is discoverable. It's supposed to be there's supposed to be a surveillance system in place. So the broker-dealer is monitoring it. You want to know what kind of system they're using. Are they using Tumbleweed or another type of a surveillance product? How are they archiving it? How are they indexing it? Who has control of it? Does the financial advisor have the ability to alter the email? Where is it residing? What does the broker-dealer actually have control of? Do they use a third party to manage that resource? What's the responsibility for that third party to actually provide the information to you for discovery? And then data handling. You always want to make sure that you're analyzing the data in its native format. This is where a product like IDEA actually helps out. And there's others that are available as well, but any really good data analytics program and platform that's out there allows you to actually look at the information without changing it and analyzing it in its resident state. As a fraud examiner, one of the things that can happen is if you go and you look at somebody's computer, computers are a real gold mine. You go in, you look at it, and the minute you click on the file, you've already changed the registry. Okay, so if you're relying on the date or some nuance to the creation of that file, and just going and looking at that information, or if it's delivered to you in some other soft format in a stick, or even through Dropbox, where they've passed a file to you, just the fact that you've gone and opened it, okay, can alter it. And depending on what you're actually trying to achieve with your litigation goals, that can actually make a big difference to your case, because what you're looking at might not necessarily be what it actually was on their side. Okay, because just by the fact that you look at it, it's changed. Control of the information, you definitely want to have that. Okay, and then managing the information using a good a case management system to be able to index all of this information that makes sense, that you're able to actually archive it, bring it back, and refer back to it over time. Now, knowing how to define the information is really germane to what you're trying to achieve. So the respondent systems, okay, knowing that, you want to make sure that you ask, for the type of indexing and archiving system you're using. A common one that's used quite extensively is SharePoint. A lot of the banks, insurance companies, and healthcare use it. And you want to make sure that you have and understand how that product actually works. A lot of times they might be storing information locally, where they've diversified different information along business lines. The respondent's lexicon, how they call things. A compliance manual might be it might be different than a handbook, might be different than a guide, might be different to a procedural manual, to an operations manual. What do they actually call these things? And then how are they're actually indexing and archiving the information within their own systems is very important as well. I know as far as like indexing and archiving, there's some questions about that earlier. Any questions that you might have about that? How they might be actually doing that?
To deal with some of these objections, you definitely don't want to get the tidal wave of information. You want to get it focused to your specific area. But
Right.
why don't you just say, all writings, evidence code 250, wherever stored in the world, and all versions thereof.
Right. Well,
That gives you the tidal wave. That's everything.
yeah. Well, the thing is, in California specifically, under the Discovery Act, they have a remedy for that, and it has to be reasonably accessible. Okay. Now that's the big gray area. Okay. How do you agree upon what's reasonably accessible? Information is cheap, these days, and how to store information. The practice is to capture everything now. So if it's going to require your respondent to actually, go to their technology area, have them write a script, do a new query, if it's not a part of their standard reporting, is that reasonable? So these are some of the arguments that you're going to start encountering as more information actually moves into a soft state, what they call a soft state. You might really want to look at a hard copy of a file. That file may not exist anymore. There are regulatory requirements depending on the business and how long hard files need to be persistent. Banking, financial services, standards generally 7 years, 3 years on site, 4 years off site, and so forth. But depending on the type of business and the space that your respondent's in, that may have been gone yesterday, after a month or a week, or it may not have even existed. And then I've found as a fraud examiner, even with the information system and the document retrieval systems that are available now, what you actually find in the imaged, when you actually get lucky, you can actually source the original hard copy of a file or documents. Sometimes you realize, well, there's items missing. reverse pages that weren't imaged, pages that were stuck together. Like, I mean, it goes on and on and on. But a lot of times you do actually find some information that, wasn't converted accurately into the soft state. So, again, I touched on platforms a little bit, communications, the type of email system that they're using, whether it's Outlook, there's a number of others. I don't know of anybody that's still using Netscape. But you never know. You never know. And then the organization silos, knowing who's responsible for the information is really important, because someone's title as the owner of information. I've found in a lot of organizations, they might not know that they're responsible for that information. So, you might spend a lot of time and effort, you send the request, it goes all the way up through their compliance department, through council, back down again, and then the person's like, I didn't even know it was part of my job description. So you want to make sure that you have a functional based map, know what their organization silos are, not what their titles are. And then geography. This is something that, I'll bring up Dropbox here, and a lot of cloud-based storage. You run into a problem because you can get into a multi-jurisdictional issue. Even though you might be dealing with a local case here, the information that you're dealing with in the request might be held, again, take the example of the insurance company. It might be on a server in Mumbai, where the underwriting was done. The mortgage that you might be looking at, or the document, or any other legal covenant that you might be looking at, might be resident elsewhere. So that might actually come into play, depending on the type of case and the work that you're doing.
How many of you use Dropbox? Do you use the business version or just the free personal one? Do you know?
I use this really so little.
The free
Is there a
version,
difference?
you can actually Google and pull documents off of it.
Yeah.
They discovered a major security flaw that if you use Dropbox and you share it with a third person, that link becomes discoverable through Googling.
Yeah, it's actually amazing what's up there. You actually see that a lot with the Google Drive as well. I don't know how many times. Again, I keep on going back to fraud examinations. Finding a financial advisor's profile on Google Plus, and then right there, I found documents right off their profile that they've posted, because they've opened it up for certain clients to look at, or some advertising, and a lot of times you can actually find that. So. A lot of people aren't aware just how easy it is for you to make a gaffe and open up information to the public. Just a little bit more.
I asked it.
No, go ahead.
Just because, and it's only
Please.
because I really never use Dropbox very much, except that how I'm doing now, somebody wants to give me documents on Dropbox.
Yes.
And so I now set up a Dropbox thing basically just for that. So how would somebody, and so it's being shared, how would somebody search on Google for something like, how
There's
would
a
that,
security flaw when you have your Dropbox and you share the folder with a outside
person,
party,
yeah.
a third person, which would be your client, that if you're not using the business version, which costs a monthly fee, that security flaw allows everything within that Dropbox on that link you've shared to be Googled and to be accessible to anybody who goes into Google and
you mean I could
randomly.
Google the information that's in a document and possibly pull up the document?
You could Google the Dropbox location and pull up everything you've put onto Dropbox to share with your client.
There's a lot of the people that are actually looking for this will actually write search scripts that will look for key pieces of information. The thing that what I'm worried about Dropbox is, the last figure I saw, like over 80% of its users are free. Okay, use the free version.
And the business version doesn't have this problem. It's just the free
Right.
version.
but they're sharing a lot of the same resources.
Does
So-
it then give access to just the Dropbox section?
Just
or?
the Dropbox
So I'm not worried
portion.
about getting into my other.
No,
Okay.
it's only what you share on that portion of the Dropbox that you share with your clients. So you can set up Dropbox and have 20 folders in it. If you only share one of them, that one folder is the only one that's accessible.
And one of the things I'd recommend, if you're not sure, you can also use like an encryption program for the file on your side. There's TrueCrypt, BitLocker, which is resident on most PCs.
You can encrypt from within Acrobat.
Yeah.
If you're exchanging PDFs, Acrobat Professional will encrypt your PDF so that you don't have to worry about someone else getting at it.
One of the easiest ones, and actually for my USB drives and files, if you have a PC, Windows 7, just use the BitLocker function on it. At least it's a resident encryption program.
You call that what?
It's called BitLocker.
B-I-T?
BITLOCKER. And you can encrypt the file before you actually email it and send it. There's a couple of others, they're available. A lot of the, like Sophos is another one.
What about encrypting to the cloud?
Well,
Okay.
that's what I use CrashPlan for. I encrypt it on my end, and they hold the data, but I can access it anywhere in the world, and it doesn't decrypt until I download it back to one of my devices.
By using third-party equipment, you can pretty much use any of the cloud technologies
Yes, you
with
can.
the same one, so that probably.
Well, CrashPlan allows me to, it also serves as a backup program. I can back up, I think it costs me $100 a year. I have unlimited space. If I want to back up 2 terabytes of data, it's the same as if I want to back up one file. So I use that to back up my entire hard drive, and I control the encryption. And they actually have a service where if your computer goes down, you can pay, it's like $50 or $100. They will put your encrypted file, the entire thing, onto a hard drive and mail it to you overnight, so you can restore your entire system.
And the only problem with that is potentially, if you lose your encryption code, you're dead.
Correct.
Put it in your safe deposit
Put in your
box.
safe deposit box. I mean, that's a lower risk than the company going out of business or someone taking them over and having access, or an employee who gets pissed off. I mean, you've probably read years ago about the transcriber in India who was doing UCSF medical records. She decided, UCSF didn't even know that their transcription company was sending stuff to India. She decided she wasn't being paid enough by her contractor, and she threatened to release all of the medical records onto the internet unless she was paid more. Can't prevent that.
You definitely want to be very careful when you're dealing with information in the cloud. The cloud has become like this standard. It's a lot of different things, but you want to make sure just like there's a number of different clouds. You've got Cumulus, Nimbus, Cirrus. I'm a former pilot, so one of the things that you want to make sure is you understand what it is you're actually using. I'll just wrap up a little bit on e-discovery. There's actually a product out there that's now available that will really help a small firm. And since more information is actually being stored by large firms in cloud-based platforms, it's actually called Discovery Cloud. Go figure, right? Well, the thing is, it's a very affordable tool. It does allow you to affect discovery, and I believe it's 27 states. That now that have e-discovery legislation on the books. There's probably more to come over the next couple of years. So it's going to be coming up more and more. So being familiar with the tools and how you're actually going to be able to extract, review, and analyze the information is going to be very, very important to you. And then leveraging off the information you actually have in the platforms you already have in your own practice, knowing how to use those to your best advantage. And I'll just pass that to David.
I just have a few short things since we're just about done. I mean, we talked about Dropbox. Really, when you're looking at a lot of these cloud services, what you want to ask the vendors is who controls the encryption key? Do you control the encryption on your side, or do they control it? Because if they control it, and they have an employee who's unhappy, that employee has access to your files. If you control the encryption, they can't touch your file. NSA can probably touch your files, but the NSA can do pretty much whatever they want if they want to get at you. So that's the issue you want to look at, is who's controlling that encryption and the control of the files, you or them. And that's the same thing with Gmail. They're controlling your files rather than you controlling who accesses the files. And you know, that's becoming more and more of an issue. You're seeing, you know, more hackers accessing stuff, you know, and the risk of somebody putting a keylogger on your computer that's sending your files overseas to somewhere in Russia. I mean, the FBI this week just had a huge sting all around the world. There were, what, 20 countries that participated in it to take down a massive hacking ring. They had 80 people arrested all over the planet. So, you know, those people are out there, and that's all they do, is they try and get at your data and use it against you. I mean, that's how they get paid.
And you know, unfortunately, you know, San Francisco and the Bay Area is actually one of the target metropolitan areas for a lot of this, because of the extent of the information that is actually passing through this area. You know, physical information and soft information. The intellectual property, mostly it's the intellectual property that they're after. You know, a few miles, you know, to the south here, but you know, it really has become a hotbed for that.
I don't know how many of you use Androids, but if you're going to use Androids and download programs, I mean, Apple has their own store. That's the only place you can get their apps unless you jailbreak it. Be very careful not to go outside of Android or Google, their name brand marketplaces, to download applications for your phone. Since Android is an open system, it's very hackable, and the hackers love it. They just had a report that came out today from Kaspersky, who does antivirus software, and they found that there's a number of apps, antivirus apps, that were put onto the Android store that are actually Trojan horses to steal your data.
Wow. Just to give you an example, I recently switched to an iPhone. For years I've been actually with Droid, and I actually have done some development using you know, Google's SDK platform, which is how you program applications on Android phones. And you know, when you get to that point, anyone can download Android SDK and actually develop apps. That's the great thing about it, is there's a lot of programmers actually creating really, really good applications for Droids. The bad thing is anyone can download it and anyone can create an app. So you want to make sure that if you have a Droid, you know, it's just like your computer, you have an malware, antivirus, and some sort of encryption on it. And you can make sure the one you're downloading is a good one too, because there was that issue where someone just created a product and it didn't actually do anything except extract marketing information from your phone. But you had a nice little icon that said your phone was secure. So you do want to make sure that it's you know, it's another little computer. You want to make sure that it's protected.
It's a brave new world. Wait till they hack your Google Glasses.
I'm waiting.
So I just have two comments. One comment, as I'm listening and sitting in the background here and thinking that I'm coming from an office that has 11 people other than myself operating computers. One thing I think you really want to do as a manager of a law firm is to make sure that you have pretty strict guidelines on what people can do and have an understanding of what they can do. My employment law part of my brain tells me that, and we have it in your manual, employee handbook, you want to make sure that everybody knows that you have complete and unfettered access to their computers, because you need to know what's going on. They need to be controlled what's going on. I'm looking here, you know, everything needs to have a virus protection and a malware running on it. I have plenty of people in my office who have no malintent whatsoever, but they go searching on certain websites that download everything, and they're not aware of it. And the next thing you know, their system is crashing, it's slowing down. I've got to have my IT guy in to look at it. He goes, well, you have 14 Trojan horses on the machine. So we as owners of law firms have to be cognizant of our ethical obligations. We have to be cognizant of what's going on so that we can prevent these hackers from getting something in the background of your system and then dumping your C drive, which is, you know, your box, or worse yet, getting a hold of your server system and getting into it. So, you know, consult with an IT person. It's really important to know these things and know what's going on. Last thing is, you've been somewhat sidelined by my propensity to talk forever and giving some time to David, but you know, we came here with you being the complete Mac person. Is there anybody here that's complete Mac in their office? So we have a few out there. Is there anything that we've talked about from our perspective that you want to add to, detract from, whatever, where you haven't had your chance to talk yet? So.
Not really. I mean, the Mac is no different from the PC nowadays. Every iteration of the software, somebody's stealing. I mean, Apple's either stealing from Microsoft or Microsoft is stealing it from Apple. All the programs pretty much run on both. I mean, Microsoft Office was developed for the Mac.
Right.
It was ported to PC by Bill Gates. So everything on Microsoft is available. You can run PowerPoint and Word and Excel. Acrobat is fully cross-platform. The documents go back and forth, no problem. You know, you're going to have some of the more specific programs that aren't available on the Mac, and you can run those through PC emulation, like Trial Director and some of the others, but they run on the iPad, so you can get the data there. So there's really, I mean, there's not a whole world of difference nowadays, and no one knows that I run a Mac unless I tell them. They're not going to be able to tell from my documents. Yes?
It's still a minority though, by far, at least in the legal profession.
Yes?
Is there a reason why that is, other than just people are set in their ways, or is
Because
there a
attorneys are
downside?
conservative, and
Yeah.
IBM started it, and it was very conservative, so, yeah.
90% of my clients are still PC-based. More so is because of the cost of changing information and the equipment over.
Once you're in the Apple marketplace and you've got your iPhone, you've downloaded all these apps, if you want to switch to Android, you've got to rebuy all those apps. You can't just transfer it across. So Apple knows that, Google knows that, Microsoft knows that. They can lock you in.
They call it the ecosystem,
Yeah.
the iOS ecosystem.
Yep. Jobs
So
was
basically,
brilliant.
I have a PC, I'm running time slips, 20 years, and so if I switched to the Apple, I wouldn't be able to use it.
No, Time Slips was killed on the Mac, I think it's 15 plus years
Right,
ago.
so,
Well, you could still use it through, I mean, you can run soft PC or whatever they call it now. You're running a full Intel on your Mac, a full Windows operating system. You don't even tell there's a difference. And if you wanted to actually do nothing but buy a Mac and run only Windows, they actually run faster than a dedicated Windows machine because Apple controls the hardware. Yes, in the back.
For people, especially Android users, do you have any rules of thumb for telling if something's a trustworthy app to download? I mean, in general, if you pay for it, is that trustworthy?
No.
No, if you get it from the Google store or what
Google
the
Play Store.
that's your best. That is your safest bet. It's not 100% sure. I mean, malware has slipped into Apple's store. Apple's caught it fairly quickly. Google's got a larger store because anybody, it's an open system. They're a little slower at catching stuff, but definitely don't go to some third-party website and start downloading stuff. Go to the trusted source.
Yeah, I'd even do one step further, and before you actually download it onto your Droid, go to the physical site, Google Play, on your PC. Take a look at it, identify it, read the reviews, look at who the manufacturer, who the programmer and developer was, and then take that information, go back to your phone, and go right back to that site. You can even email the URL to yourself through Google Play on your PC. Just open it up on your Droid and then download it. That would be the safest way, especially if it's something critical where it's going to be accessing sensitive information on your phone. I would do that. Banking apps especially.
And hopefully you've all set a lock on your phone, so you have to enter some type of a keystroke to get into it. And then for critical apps, like for the program I use to access my data, that's got a second level of encryption on it that you have to enter another password. So don't have your phone just.
I also run AVG antivirus on my cell phone also.
What is your recommendation for virus protection?
On the Mac? I don't need one.
Yeah, exactly. So on our system, we've been running AVG for a long time. It's AVG. It's actually it's a free. Well, actually no, we don't pay for free. We pay for license. That's what my IT guy runs the entire IT department for Redwood City. So he moonlights for our office, and we follow his directions on that. We use the professional, and then we use Malwarebytes as BYTES as our malware kind of look over things. The AVG virus software is set to run every night. It runs every night around 9 o'clock on all the systems, which is about the time everybody's already gone, Kind of doesn't, sometimes it'll run while I'm there and it interferes, it slows everything I'm doing down tremendously. But it's been very effective.
Don't skimp on that part of it.
Yeah.
Spend a little more money to get a good antivirus software. Keep it updated. I mean, most companies are updating almost daily. There's so many viruses out there, and they're pushing out updates that quickly.
Another quick question for you, David. You
Yes.
brought us some nifty tools for the traveling practitioner. Anything else that you were going to talk about in terms of must-haves for being on the road?
I mean, not really. I use this. As I said, I'm paperless, but not paper-free. For litigation, when paper comes in, I also use this binder system, which is by Binder Tech, which works. I mean, you know, when I was starting out as an attorney, they had, you know, the manila files. They put it all into with a 2-hole punch at the top,
Right.
and then the paralegal would transfer it to a litigation binder to go to litigation.
Yeah.
Why wouldn't you just start with a binder?
Yeah.
You know, it doesn't make any sense to have multiple steps to get to the end. Just start where you're going to finish.
So I had trial in Sacramento. I had trial in Modesto this year. When I was in Sacramento, I actually brought with me a little wireless HP printer that had a scanning device on it. So that was really handy because I wound up having to do a couple of motions during trial, and you know, using all of the things I've talked about in terms of creating the base document on my system at the office, and then having it through Dropbox to be able to work on it live on my laptop. I was able to print it right there in the hotel room and then walk to court with it the next day. The flip side was I didn't bring a printer with me to Modesto. I needed a printer for a couple of items. What I did do was I had a little stick. So I saved it to the stick, and I went over to the copy shop before trial and slammed it in. But you know what happened? It took her a half an hour to get it going. For some reason, their printers weren't working. It was a big mess, and you could see me, you know, I started off all calm, and by the time I left, I was sweating. I needed a new shirt. It's like, I got to be in court in 5 minutes and that kind of stuff. So look, printers are cheap and easy, and they're multifunction. You can fax, you can scan, you can print and call. You can do all at once. And you can plug it in with a USB port.
You can print from your phone, the iPad, you name it.
Yeah. So I mean, you know, for the litigator on the go, it's that plus my printer, and I'm pretty much good to go.
Yep. Yes.
What do you recommend in the way of a scanner for putting together big files and things?
I mean, I've used this for years, a ScanSnap. You can get heavier duty versions with this one. You can load 50 plus pages at a time. You hit the button, it goes right to Acrobat.
So
Works great.
at our office, our copy machine, our big giant Ricoh copier has
All
the
of
scanning
those.
device on it, and that loads. So again, you know, the obsessive office manager that I am, I know that it scans 1 page per second. So I know that when my paralegal bills a 0.2 for scanning some 30-page document, he's already in trouble with me. But at any rate, so what we do with that actually, so our system in the office is only one person's in charge of the mail. I can move over here. Only one person is in charge of receiving mail. Her job is to open it. She goes and she scans it all, and she goes back to her system and she opens it up. We have a separated drive, segregated drive for our scan. It's the P drive. And what she does is she opens it in Adobe Acrobat. She pushes the Time Matters Save button, which allows us to save it now to the proper subdirectory in the Smith versus Jones case with the proper name on it. And because you have now opened the application Time Matters, if there's any calendaring to do, she can do it right there in that screen. So if it happens to be, let's say, a notice of taking deposition, it's scanned, it's saved to the right place, and right there she can also add the event time and date and hit save, and within 30 seconds it's on my Outlook.
So your mail comes to you in Outlook through an email.
So no, so yeah, to be clear, the date time is saved on Outlook. In Time Matters, there's a little trigger that I've set up called for the messenger, and whenever TM saves a document, Time Matters saves a document, whichever team is supposed to know that that document, incoming pleading or incoming correspondence comes in, we all get a little note on the bottom of our screen from Time Matters Messenger. It says incoming correspondence with a description. I did a little coding myself and added a viewer to that, so we can actually open that up and view the document right there and then and see if it's important enough to pay attention to, or can I ignore it for a day or two. But I can always go back and look through all of my Time Matters Messenger. I can go back and look through the whole week, and if I'm logging in from home or wherever I may be on my Log Me In, and I go into Time Matters, that again opens it up. So the Log Me In is really helpful because I'm real time back at my on my office computer. So that's how it works for the incoming mail. And again, if we need to do a giant scan, I have 5 boxes of materials that the University of California sent me. We'll scan it all in, and then we'll bait save it. One of the things I do is I have to measure how much time is it going to take my internal staff to do it versus outsourcing it. So we kind of have a rule of thumb. If anything is a copy job over 50 pages, it goes outside to the copy vendor to copy it, and then I can bill the client for it because it's an outside copy job, and I don't have to burn the time on it. Likewise, when we have a giant scan job to do, we have another vendor that does a lot of electronic stuff, and they're great. You can throw it at them, and they'll scan the whole thing, and they'll send it back with the CD-ROM on it, and boom, we've got it. And if I want, they'll bait stamp it, although I'd rather have control over my bait stamping.
So you just have to, you have to cost it out yourself. Is it more worthwhile to do it in-house and potentially not charge the client, or send it out to a third party for a nominal fee and just pass that along to the client?
Last question on that. How do you bill when you're reviewing your mail? Can you also bill from Time Matters?
No, I don't use Time Matters billing. I use time slips. Yeah.
That's why you want multiple
Yeah.
monitors. So on one monitor
Yes.
you can have a couple programs, and the other monitor
Sure.
you have a couple programs.
So-
So I usually have my calendaring program, email, the web program, Microsoft Word, Acrobat, my billing program, all open all at the same time. I've got 8 or 9 programs that are always open all the time.
On different screens?
I've got 2 screens, a 27-inch and a 22 or 25-inch.
Yeah, and I have two 22-inch monitors, and then there's the occasional day where I'll plug my laptop in to the server, and so if that's the case, I usually run my my email all on that and just leave everything else open. To answer your question, though, the way that I really do my billing is this sounds horrible because I'm talking about technology in the law office. But
You
what
don't
I do
use
is
the paper, do you?
I wait. No. We have a rule in the office. You cannot. You have to capture your time at the moment you're doing the event, and I do not allow paper tracking. And because with time slips, the gentleman here have it. I can actually. I've set up for the people that are under my command a window that will update their hours every 15 minutes, and so that if I look and it's noon and my paralegal doesn't have anything in the system, he hears from me. I'm like, "What happened? I know you've been doing work. You got to capture it." And you jump on them enough. It gets them. But what I do, Renee, actually is I wait for that. I look at the mail as that scan just to see what's there.
Right.
But then it comes to my desk, and when it's on my desk, that's when I sit and I just capture the time of billing it. Now, for insurance defense, for those of us who are doing it, we can bill a 0.1 for basically every piece of mail that comes in. So it's review. You never receive anything anymore.
Yeah.
It's only review. Review notice of taking deposition, 0.1. Review demand for inspection of documents, 0.1. If it's something that's going to my clients, then typically I don't even pick up that part of the mailing. If it's to another party, I do. If it's to my client, I capture that by telling my paralegal, go get all of this stuff ready. Act on the file, as it were. But I actually use the paper sources, and what it does is it goes from my in basket across my track the time and into the to be filed. But that's the last time that physical document's ever used in the office, because everybody is going to be my associate. I mean, she dies if she has to touch paper. And she's not much younger than I am, but she just is like, I just want it all on the system, and she complains if a complaint hasn't been scanned now. It's great.
Don't wait to capture your time. There's no reason not to have your time billing program open all day long and go back and forth to it.
Are there any time dictation programs so that you can speak your time instead of always having?
So
Dragon will
Dragon will work in almost any program, and yes, you can put it into time slips. Now, what we've done with time slips, just to kind of play that balance, is we've set up codes for just about everything. I've got about 150 different abbreviations for everything from estate planning to the litigation to you name it. And typically, what I do is the code falls in the level of process. So if it's in estate planning and they're at the 3rd meeting, the design meeting or whatever, it's probably going to be about EP 15 on the list, because that's the 15th step in the process called open an estate planning file to closing an estate planning file. If it's case management, for those of us in litigation, CMC 01 is preparing the case management statement. CMC 02 is reviewing the opposing side's case management statement. CMC 03 is appearing at the case management conference. And by typing CMC 03, it says appear at case management conference, and then I can add matter order to trial or whatever. So
I'm not worried about dictating stuff in because we've got everything as a code. And if there's people in my office that don't do other things other than EP, estate planning, then the only list of codes they have in front of them is the estate planning stuff. And then you begin to memorize, what the certain codes are. So
And
that's
you
the
can
way
do
we
that
avoid
on,
that.
even if it's not built into your program, there are third-party programs you can buy on both Windows and the Mac, where you can type in, EFT or whatever, and it'll bring out a whole paragraph, as much as you want for just a couple characters. So you can set those up for yourself, so you're not typing every time, review case management statement. You can just put RVC or something, it'll pop the whole thing into your billing program.
Are you still date stamping your mail?
She writes on, when she stamps it scanned, she writes in the date that she scans it, right? And so that's the effective date stamp now.
So how, if you ever have, a deadline issue, how do you prove the date that it was received? Supposedly the proof of service was 10 days prior to the date you actually got it.
Yeah, all I can do is we have our date, we have the scan date on it, and that's what we use. And, as you say, proof of service, we're really supposed to go by the proof, not by the receipt date.
So you don't know if the postal service screwed up. The only
Yeah.
way you could prove that is to keep the envelope, because you'd have to look at the stamp on the envelope from the mailing from the U.S. Post Office.
And typically I don't see that as a huge problem in my practice. And if it were something that was like way aberrant, I would normally send a letter to the opposing side saying, hey, what's up? Your proof of service says 10 days ago and I'm just now receiving it, and let them fight it back so that if I have to go to court on it, I've got something that shows that I reacted right away, right? I mean, if you don't react, if you don't respond, there's kind of that deemed admission component. So that's how I would deal with
Yeah,
those.
if it's that critical, you're probably going to catch it after the first time or two and start saving their envelopes. I mean, I've rarely had to do that. I mean, I can only think of one time. Most people aren't going to do that kind of stuff to you, but if it comes to it, you're going to have to save every envelope from that particular attorney if they're going to play that kind of a game, because that's the only proof you can really have for the court.
I know for a lot of financial institutions, insurance companies, mortgage companies, they're already doing that. They'll scan the envelope.
The insurers that I work for, that I'm retained by, when I get a company file from the insurer, it's got every envelope that ever arrived, it's scanned. I mean, it drives me nuts because there's so much waste in there, but they scan the arrival of all of the documents from opposing counsel, from the claimant, whatever. There are insurance regulations that require them to promptly respond and stuff, and this is the way that if they're ever audited, if for compliance purposes or get in trouble with the insurance commissioner, they've got a way of doing it. So, but do I have my my mail person, my female mail person scan envelopes? Heck no, that goes to the recycling bin. I don't have enough time for that. It's hard enough that she's got to remove staples all the time.
Correct. It becomes difficult too if you're getting a manila envelope. You can't really run that through a scanner because the metal prongs, you're going to have to pry that off or cut the face page so you can scan it in. And I don't scan any envelopes and never have.
So I would say it's half past.
Yeah, thank you guys for staying.
If you
late.
guys look, and I was just going to say, I'm off. If you have more questions, for those of you that need to go and have to be places, please. We've gone way over our time. Thank you.
Very good. Thank you.